Meanwhile, the Africa Unite Border Bus Trucks Association is threatening to shut down Mozambique and Zimbabwean embassies if their vehicles are not protected during post-election protests. I am joined now by the association's chairperson, Phumudzo Mukhwathi. Mr. Mukhwathi, good to have you on the program, despite the circumstances in Mozambique. Firstly, have you raised concerns, or you have raised concerns, I must say, as an organization about this violent situation in Mozambique? Can you expand on what specifically makes the current situation in Mozambique a ticking time bomb from your perspective?
Thank you, Nkaja, and the viewers at home. Indeed, we warn about this ticking time bomb and the violence, abrupt violence in the Mozambique. It was not a shock about the Constitutional Court in Mozambique to declare the Frelimo, the victory, the President Chapo, as a president of Mozambique. Because we know that here in the SADC region and the African leaders, they use the court, they use the army, they use soldiers and the police as a tool to win the election. Sometimes they even go beyond to imprison the opposition parties, sometimes to assassinate them, to suppress their voice. That's why we ask a question that if you win fair and free election, why are the people of Mozambique still protesting on the street? Because so far we are hearing the threats of the stages of the protest ranging from V6, V8, V12 turbo stages of the protest in Mozambique. That's why we are also calling for the United Nations military personnel and other military personnel from others to protect our assets, even the drivers, even the people of Mozambique. Because today, the people of Mozambique, they're not even enjoy their festive season due to this violence and an unfair election in the Mozambique. We feel that our trucks, it is not protected. That's why we are planning to say, if we fail to operate and our industry, it is affected, there is no way rather than to go to their embassies, embassy of Mozambique, embassy of Zimbabwe, because most of the time we were the SADC chair, which is Emmerson Mnangagwa. He was very quiet when there is a violence in the Mozambique. Even our truck industry was affected. What he did, he took a flight with 238 delegates from the government of Zimbabwe to go to Baku to seek for funds to plant trees in Zimbabwe, instead of making sure that livelihood, our industry, it is protected. But the SADC chair of Zimbabwe, because the same situation happened in Mozambique, is the same method of operandi which is happened when there is election in Mozambique in the Zimbabwe.
Mr. Mukhwathi.
And we are calling to say President Emmerson Mnangagwa must step down, because he's causing a huge damage to the SADC region and African continent, because they denied freedom in the Mozambique. It means people of Mozambique, they're going to flee to South Africa illegal. The same problem when we are having people from Zimbabwe flee to South Africa.
Mr. Mukhwathi, I'm very interested in this analogy that you make. You've mentioned that the situation in Mozambique, well, at least according to your organization, mirrors the methods which have been used in Zimbabwe during elections. But could you explain maybe further the similarities you see in how these elections are conducted and the impact on opposition voices in both countries, really?
Indeed, you see the opposition parties, including the Venetio, Monjan, as we speak, we don't know where he's hiding. And we also call and warn that closing the border as if they are closing the tap water by the border management and other institutions, excluding the affected parties and opposition parties, led by Monjan and other parties. That's where we are saying there will be no permanent solution because affected parties are the people of Mozambique and the opposition parties led by Monjan. And the failure to do that, this violence, I don't think it is going to stop now. That's why we're also calling for state of emergency, because if violence like this happening, our industry, we are going to lose the contract.
Right.
Some of the drivers, they are not going to go to Mozambique. And we are also calling to the leaders here in the African continent, detectors, that this thing must come to an end. And we're also calling to say their account must be frozen, because when the people on the ground killing one another, the army used brutal, the same way using in Zimbabwe. These leaders, they will flee to European country, rich country, to hide themselves. When here in the African continent, there will be a civil war in the Mozambique. That's why we're calling to say their bank account, their sponsors, they must be frozen immediately until they solve our issues. Because as an African, we are suffering. There is no white leader leading us so far. African leaders, they are abusing us as an African
let's
leaders.
Let's get back to the matter at hand. You had started giving us just an idea of how this flare-up of protest or violence has interrupted your operations as well, or at least members of your organization. Let's go back to that. Your organization is concerned about the safety of your drivers and assets in Mozambique very specifically. What has been the impact, or maybe expand a bit further on the impact of the current political unrest on your industry so far? And what specific risks do you foresee moving forward?
You see, we try to speak with our members. They are very scared to go to Mozambique because there is no guarantee that when you cross with your trucks, it will come back that truck. We are scared that issues such as arson may erupt. And that's why we are calling to say, to move the truck to Mananga. We warn that solution, it is not a permanent, because as truckers, we don't get funds from the AU, we don't get funds from the SADC led by Mnangagwa. We don't get any cent. That's why we're saying, if it continues suffering, because we're going to lose our contract, losing our assets if we try to cross to Mozambique. The business related to the leaders from Mozambique, or the people who caused the violence, even the associate from the Zimbabwe, we are going to make sure that we shut it down, because so far we are suffering.
Let's speak about the economic impact of the flare-up of protests in Mozambique, but specifically speaking to your industry. Are you able to give us at this point just how much truckers are losing in the event as operations continue to be suspended, or at least the movement of goods to and from Mozambique?
The loss is huge, because it's not less than 10 million daily. And when the situation continue, we are losing more than that. That's why we are saying it is affecting us badly. And we are very worried about the SADC chair quietly. When he knows that our industry, it is affected, he keep quiet. That's why we are saying there is no other option rather than shutting down their embassy, their associates, until the situation solved in the Mozambique.
And very interesting, as we wrap, you've also called for a state of emergency in Mozambique and the deployment of international peacekeepers. What immediate steps do you think, for instance, the UN or other international bodies should take to indeed protect the safety of both Mozambicans and foreign nationals in that country?
You will remember that in few years, there was issues in Cabo Delgado, violence. So we are scared that when these issues, it may erupt in a way like we can have a civil war in future. That's why we're saying this problem must be tackled as soon as possible, because the fears we're having a violence in Beira, also in the Cabo Delgado. That's why we're saying this problem must be solved. And states of emergency must be engaged, because this, what to call our army, led by African leaders, they don't protect the citizen. They are the one who make sure that violation, brutal killing of opposition, they are part and parcel of the violation of human rights in our continent, which is unfair. That's why we're calling to say President Mnangagwa must step down as soon as possible, because there is no way we're going to shut down the embassies of Zimbabwe and Mozambique.
Phumudzo Mukhwathi, thank you so much for your time as we wrap up tonight's discussion, of course, on those disruptions, specifically at the Libombo border post, with the movement of trucks, or rather goods, being suspended at the moment. This does highlight the concerns also being raised by the African Unite Border Bus Trucks Association and the urgent need for action in Mozambique, as you heard in that discussion that happened.